This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's CAS, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one.
Hey, what's up, dude? Happy Sunday.
Yeah, same to you, brother.
Yeah, man. I think some cool things happened in the world that we used to be a part of, and maybe I'm still kind of adjacent to it.
You definitely are adjacent to it.
Yeah, the military. In fact, well, there's been actually some really interesting stuff in the last, I don't know, what was it, week, 10 days or so. You got the government shutdown. That sort of affected a lot of people that we know. In fact, remember Doug Stone was on the show, was it last year maybe? And he texted me the night before, things went dark for the military. And he goes, "Hey, dude, you're going to be out of a job. You should just come over and hang out at my house for a few days. We'll just have some beers." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, it doesn't work like that. Sorry. I mean, I don't work for the government. I'm a contractor and we're funded. So sorry."
Yeah.
But anyways, I do know of several GS people who have been told to just stay at home. And, that sucks. That affects people's lives. And I hate... We can talk about the politics of it later, so let's just table that for a minute. I'm sure it'll come up. But the thing I kind of wanted to focus on today, because it affects you and I, was what Pete Hegseth, the Department of War Secretary of Department of War, came out and he pulled all the generals together. And why are you snickering?
It's just the whole Department of War thing cracks me up.
I got something on that here in a little bit. He pulls all the generals and senior enlisted from around the world, had them all fly in there and gives them this big, rah-rah speech. And I kind of use rah-rah tongue in cheek because it was a little bit, I have some opinions on it that we can talk about, but I don't hate the messaging. And so I thought we'd just discuss that. And the reason I say it applies to you and I know that we're kind of retired and maybe I'm adjacent to it, but we both have kids who are either in or joining. And I just got a text from one of our buddies that was in our beta group last year. His son just graduated boot camp last weekend, or
cool.
Friday. Yeah. And so the point is it is still very close to us. And as much as we can, we sit here as old retired guys and we kind of laugh and snicker and point fingers and throw rocks at people, but it does affect us and our families in an indirect way. My son wants to go in and be a fighter pilot. Your son is wanting to go in and be special forces. And the speech I think that Hegseth gave, it's very applicable to those two career fields, specifically, a lot of others, but specifically to those two. So I thought we'd throw it on the table and see what's up. What do you think?
All right. Yeah. I'll let you start.
Now, okay, so in the pregame, we established that neither one of us have watched the entire thing front to back. I watched a couple of highlight videos of it. They were about 10 or 15 minutes each. I took some notes on it. So in that regard, yes, listeners, I am sort of talking out of my ass.
Yeah.
However,
I'm totally talking out of mine because you're actually, for the first time on the Be One Change One podcast, I think you're more prepared for this than I am because I didn't know that we were going to talk about this
fucking
morning.
Trend setting, man.
Look at you go, brother.
Holy shit.
You got notes and shit.
Aim low and achieve my goals. I love it. All right. All I got to do is have more notes than CAS and I win. To start off, a little history. And it's funny that you snickered when I said Department of War or War Department. It's Department of War.
Yeah, it's Department of War.
Because I knew this, but I had to go look it up and get the details of it. But on August 7th, 1789, Congress established the Department of War. It's because they had already established the Army, the Marines, and the Navy as some of their initial legislation that they were working on, they established those 3 departments, and they quickly realized they needed some mechanism in the government to be able to, I guess, have oversight or direct from the executive branch down. And so they established a cabinet level position, the Secretary of War, under the Department of War, and that's where it started. And that lasted all the way up until 1947 in the National Security Act. Harry S. Truman puts out this National Security Act, and then finally in 1949, it was the Department of Defense, or the Department of War was officially renamed the Department of Defense. And then now we know here in the last couple of months, we've changed it back to Department of War. So War Department, Department of Defense, Department of War. That's kind of the lineage of just the nomenclature. Also, fun fact, in that 1947 National Security Act, the CIA was created. And we can go down that deep, dark rabbit hole if we want to sometime, but that's fun. That was a fun little aside to that. But I wonder, and I need to go back and do some more research on this, because I'm genuinely curious why we changed from war to defense. It seems like one is proactive and one is reactive, at least in name. And I wonder if that changed maybe the way that we approach things. I don't know. Thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, has it made a difference? I think it's performative, honestly. I think
What do you mean by that?
I think it's performative, that changing it back to the Department of War. It's just symbolism. It's just, I don't know that there's any. I mean, what has it changed? Does it change the focus? Do you think any of those generals or senior enlisted guys that were sitting in that conference room have changed their focus at all because they went from Department of Defense to Department of War? Does it change
them? Maybe not.
Does it change the roles and the responsibilities? I mean, it's hard to understand because I haven't seen, and I don't know if they've released, I've heard that Secretary Hegseth is working on, the National Defense Plan, the NDP, for whatever. I don't know when the current NDP expires, probably in 26 or something. They usually write them for, I don't know, what is it, like 4 to 6 year chunks.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if there'll be something that comes out of that's some kind of drastic change. But, I think, to me, for the most part, it just feels performative in that sense.
Yeah. So I want to, going back, though, to 1947, why do you think they changed it from war to defense then? Do you think it was for the same reasons?
Well, because are we at a constant state of war? I mean, I have no idea, Roscoe. I haven't researched it at all.
I haven't either. So
I think it's just semantics. You have a Department of Defense that can go to war, but most of the time, a lot of the times we're garrisoned. We're in peacetime. We're training for the possibility or the outcomes of war.
Yeah.
We're focused on who we think are peer competitors, or what are the capabilities that we need? What are the things that we need to be able to do for different concepts of war? Whether that's low intensity, urban, or high intensity peer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't. I think it's just semantics, honestly. I don't think it doesn't matter what you call the department. It's doing the same things. So
yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't.
Now, maybe in their defense, and I don't know if this is the case, I don't see Pete Hegseth as like a really transformative individual personally. Somebody who maybe has a lot of great ideas and is really going to be some kind of transformative icon for the Department of Defense or War or whatever you want to call it. So, I think in their defense, maybe they think that that's going to resonate more or send some kind of greater connotation to adversaries, or of what our focus is by changing. Maybe that's their intention behind it. But like I said, I haven't really researched anything of it behind it. When they came out and said it, it was kind of like the Gulf of America versus Gulf of Mexico in my mindset. It's like, okay, whatever. So I don't know what the intentionality is behind it. And maybe they really have a good reason, or there is some intentionality behind it other than it being performative. But it comes across to me as performative.
I think the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico thing, I think that was just chest pounding, to be honest.
Well, I think most of this shit is just chest pounding. I think you've got a bunch of narcissistic fucks up there that want to pretend like they're the baddest motherfucker that walked the valley, and so they do shit like this because it makes them feel really good about themselves.
All right, getting fired up. Your face is turning red. Chill out.
No, but I do. I mean,
hydrate.
That's how I feel about it. I mean, I don't think. Yeah, I think Pete Hegseth is severely underqualified to be the Secretary of Defense or War.
Well, hold up. Let's talk about that for a second. What would be? Let me frame it like this. What are the qualifications to be the Secretary of Defense?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a politically appointed position, so that is going to vary by person to person. But I think traditionally it's somebody who's had that exposure, who has worked in the national security arena to a certain extent and has some viable history and experience politically on the political side of things, working in that national security arena. And so, and probably has been exposed either, having been a congressman or a senator and working on certain committees that deal directly with DOD, or has been, maybe a secretary in a previous administration under a different department potentially, but that has a lot of, exposure to or worked closely with DOD in the past. And so that's what I would think. I would think you'd want somebody that's qualified in that realm in defense and national security.
Do you think that because you believe that there has to be some sort of knowledge of the political machine, the mechanisms to pull the different levers that you're going to have to pull to get things done?
At the cabinet level, I would say that's I would say that would be a relatively easy checkbox on the list of qualifications you would want somebody to have, because that machine's not easy, man. Right? Like there's a lot that goes into that, and somebody that doesn't have that exposure is going to have to play way more catch up, to really figure out the ins and outs of the institutional side of how all those things work, the budget process, all of that stuff to make things happen.
Yeah.
So,
as a leader, I know you'll agree with this though. As a leader, you don't have to be a subject matter expert in everything, maybe anything, because that's why you have subject matter experts. That's why you have professionals. That's why you have guys who have grown up and have that area of expertise. So the fact that someone doesn't understand the finer workings of the budgeting of the Department of Defense, that doesn't really bother me, because I know he probably has a team of dudes who have financial degrees and MBAs and shit like that can help him through that. And he probably has friends up on the Hill who are on budgeting committees who can explain. And I would hope, I would. And this is kind of a blanket, and this is not particularly towards any administration in particular, but I would hope that when you get to that level of our government, when you're talking about the executive branch and the cabinet, right? What is it, 16 now? Cabinet members, 12 or 16?
I think so.
But irregardless, that's not a word.
It is now.
Say it, spell it, use it in a sentence, right?
Yeah.
When you get to that level, right? I don't necessarily expect you to be a subject matter expert. I expect you to be, this sounds bad, but almost like a figurehead, right? You're a mouthpiece. You're speaking for the president. You're his mouthpiece, and
you're also supposed to be an advisor to the president.
And you're an advisor. And where do you get your advice from? Where do you start to build your
from
your
the subject
ideas
matter
and all
experts?
That? Hopefully from the subject matter experts. Hopefully it's not just you going out to dinner with your husband and fucking, over a glass of wine. You go, hey, it'd be really cool. Let's go to war with China.
Yeah. Here's I think where you and I might disagree on the performance of Secretary Hegseth to this point, to a certain extent, though, is I completely 100% subject matter experts. There is nobody that's going to sit in that cabinet position and just have the answers for everything, especially if they've never served a day in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also pretty obvious that since he's been there, the purge of people who are subject matter experts that maybe he disagrees with or doesn't like for certain reasons has been on. And I don't know that that necessarily gives you the best. If you can't take countering opinions to what you think is the best way to go about something, and if you do get a countering opinion, your decision is to let that person go. I don't know how good of advice you may be getting if you can't listen to people who may disagree with a direction you want to go. And I think that's the leadership piece of it that may be missing. I also think he's underqualified. Like, dude, if I had to go to an interview to be a cabinet level person for the United States government, and in my interview with the president, I had to promise not to drink in order to be the nominee, that's kind of a problem. Not because I love to drink, but he had to promise he wouldn't. Like, there's stuff in the background there that it's like, and hopefully he's been able to do that. I would hope that that's been fine. But, it's just, I don't know. I think out of the group of people that were probably available to be selected for that position, there were probably some more qualified ones than him.
Yeah.
But that's the choice that the administration made. So here we are.
Yeah. And I think it's funny that you thought I'd disagree with you on that. I actually agree with you 100%. For the most part, until you got to that last part there. I don't know that asking somebody to stop a behavior in order to take a position is necessarily a bad thing, especially if that behavior has been a problem of yours in the past. And I think it's pretty well documented that Pete Hegseth had a little bit of a drinking problem. At least that's what's reported, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what the extent of it was. I don't know if he ever went to a
really
facility or if it impacted anything one way or another, or if it's just anecdotal. I don't really know. I haven't researched that, but it's at least been out there. It's been put out there, right? And from an optics point of view, that's probably not something you want. You probably don't want your cabinet level members going and getting shit faced in a club on Friday nights, right?
Yeah.
So to ask, as far as an ask out of sheer professionalism, I don't think that's out of bounds. Maybe on a personal level for CAS, that's a deal breaker.
No, I agree with you. I think it's fine to say, hey man, make sure you check certain behaviors.
Yeah.
But also I would say that at that level, if people have demonstrated that behavior or demonstrated having an issue with that behavior, if you have GOs that have that issue and are demonstrating that issue, they don't get pulled into the office and go, hey, you need to stop. Like, they get forced into retirement. If you have, dude, we've seen it.
You've seen it, but how many of you seen that got given a second chance?
And again, my point in that is that my guess is that there were probably other people being considered at the time that had more of those qualifications that we've discussed. But it doesn't matter because that's the decision that they've made. So here we are.
And don't disagree with any of that. On that we're united. To the winner goes the spoils, man.
Yeah.
And fucking Orange Man.
You want to pick?
Orange Man won. He won.
Yeah, and the Republicans
when you're standing on the top of the hill, just like Joe Biden, he went around and picked a bunch of weirdos to be in his cabinet. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. I don't think that race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, I don't think that any of that should be a qualifier for a cabinet level position. I don't give a shit that you're a gay man. Do you know how to run the Department of Transportation? That's what I want to know, right? Do you have experience in this? And I think that that's an easy argument. I think that's an easy parallel to make if you start looking at Buttigieg and Hegseth, because
to an extent,
because the argument, the centerpiece of the argument right now is qualification, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that Pete Hegseth was at least equally qualified for the cabinet position that he was going. He was.
Pete Hegseth went to Harvard and is a Rhodes Scholar to Oxford. Like, he is a very intelligent man.
Okay.
And so going back to your previous comment of, hey, you're not going to know it. You're not going to know how to do everything. You're going to have subject matter experts that are going to come in and kind of help you figure those things out. There's a man who's got demonstrated intelligence to do just exactly what you're saying. And oh, by the way, I think is probably a little more prone to listen to maybe voices and trust, the GS-15s and the SESs that have been there forever. Trust their advice, trust their opinion.
Okay,
disagree with. Maybe
you're unraveling your argument here. You're flipped over and you're praising Pete Hegseth.
No,
for going to Harvard.
No, Buttigieg went to Harvard.
You said Hegseth.
Well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Buttigieg went to Harvard.
Holy shit, man! For the last 30 seconds, I've been going. Whoa, wait a minute.
That would be confusing. Yeah, no. Buttigieg is a Harvard grad and went to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar.
Okay.
I mean, he's a very intelligent dude. And again, I think he would be, at least demonstratively, he probably would listen to opinions counter to his and trust some of the folks that work for him and that had been in the department for a long time, regardless of maybe his idea of their own political affiliation, left or right, than Hegseth does.
All right. So Pete Hegseth has a Bachelor of Arts in Politics from Princeton and a Master of Public Policy from Harvard.
Yeah, there you go.
So again, are they not somewhat paralleled?
Maybe they are. Yeah.
I'm not necessarily, poking holes and dissecting here, but if we're comparing the two, your argument was that he was highly educated. Well, so is the other guy, right? The other guy happened to be a service member as well. And this is just me kind of being devil's advocate because I don't totally disagree with you on this.
Yeah.
But for the sake of argument, I mean, what was he, a lieutenant colonel, I think, in the reserves or something?
I think he was a major in the reserves, Army reserves.
He has some experience in there, and I haven't, dug down the rabbit hole to find out what his MOS was or anything like that. But he was at least an active service member there for a little bit. But on the subject of qualification and what gets you, what affords you the ability to be in that position, look back to like Donald Rumsfeld, right? Homeboy was a straight up fucking politician, right?
Yep.
And he was Department of Defense twice under both Bushes. Okay. Actually, no, it wasn't Bush. It was Reagan, I believe, the first time around. Nope, it was Gerald Ford. So Gerald Ford, fast forward to Bush, and he gets asked to come back in. Dude never served. In fact, was a documented draft dodger. Got into politics, worked his way up, and he was very hawkish, hawkish, and he was best friends with Dick Cheney. Right? So when there was a spot open there for the DOD, Cheney gets in Bush's ear, gets the dude the nomination because they're buddies. I don't know how much you know about Dick Cheney's rise, but he was an underling to Rumsfeld for a long, long time. Started in the Senate.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He was like an aide to Rumsfeld, and old Rummy kind of taught him the ropes. And as they worked their way up, this was sort of like, hey, I'm gonna hook my buddy up. This is a way to pay it back. Be like me buying you a bottle for being a good dude to me.
Relationships are important.
Oh no, it totally is, right? And and then what I looked at, what I started thinking about was, you get Rumsfeld too under the Bushes, and he's buddy with Dick Cheney. And then look at the fallout that happened in the early 2000s, where the DOD and the president, vice president sort of made these unilateral decisions to go and do things across the world that affected a lot of fucking people's lives.
Yeah.
Right. Anyways, maybe that's a sidebar. Maybe that's a good food for thought. My point in saying all that was, I don't think your prowess as a politician should necessarily hold as much weight in deciding who goes into what. Relationships, sure. that's politics, right? I scratch
Yep.
your back, you scratch mine. 20 years ago, you helped me out of a jam. So here's the fucking Secretary of Transportation or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But your qualifications as a politician do not necessarily transfer over to something like Department of Defense, where, the optics are huge, right? And then B, like, that is a projection of America's strength and global policy to a large degree.
Mm-hmm.
Department of Transportation, Department of Education, some of these other departments,
Yeah,
those are domestic,
they're
right?
more domestic.
But when you're talking about extending that to the world, the defense or the threat of action as a deterrent, that's got to matter, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right then. Shit. So 25-minute discussion to get to. Yeah, good, Roscoe. Press. So in the speech that he gave, and for the listeners who maybe haven't dug into this or maybe just heard the wave tops, and I did this morning, if you just type into the Google machine, the Pete Hegseth general meeting, you see all the headlines from the different mainstream media outlets, and they're all vastly different.
Yeah.
One of them, praises it and talks about how awesome it was. The other one says, "Oh my God, we're one step away from falling like Rome did." And it's pretty entertaining if you can just read it for what it is. I think it's pretty entertaining. But I think the big message, just in general, the big takeaway that I had from it was we're sort of, excuse me, the vision at that level is to kind of get rid of the idea of woke policies and hiring people based on anything but merit and qualification. That's that.
Yeah. Okay. So
Right.
what are the woke policies that have prevented people from getting into the military?
Okay. So I don't know. And I didn't really scratch that far. I'm just telling you what the message of the talk was.
Yeah. I think
I think that you and I scratched it a little bit. I don't know, last week, 2 weeks ago, when we talked about DEI and we talked about females getting into battlefield positions, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about the standard that must be met to make that. And I don't know that that's across the board. I don't know department by department or AFSC and MOS to MOS, job to job. I don't know if that's the case. I know that there are certain career fields out there, and I'll use my old career field as a crew chief, for example. You have to be able to lift 75 pounds to get that job. And I knew females who could not lift 75 pounds. This was in the late 90s and early 2000s. I knew this was going on. In fact, I got in trouble more than once because I would not put a female on a certain job because she couldn't fucking do the job.
Yeah.
She couldn't physically fucking do it. Right. And she went up and told on me, and I got shaky fingered in an office because, you got to give her the same chances you give everybody else. I said, dude, you don't understand. She cannot lift the part. She can't do it physically. She can't do it. So I don't know specifically, Cass. I just know that was sort of the messaging.
Yeah. Well, I think that was part of it. Obviously there was the fat people piece of it too, and there's been a big push towards fitness, which is good. I mean, we, in some respects, this is not new. The military goes through this about every other 6 years. I mean, I remember in the early 2000s when, we had a bunch of senior enlisted fat people in the Air Force, and they decided that was that needed to stop. We didn't look good in uniform anymore, and guys weren't meeting their PT standards. And so they came up with a new PT standard, and they started doing waist measurements again and putting guys on profile. And what happened was a bunch of the senior enlisted guys went, "Fuck you," and left.
Yeah.
And then for the next 5 years, we had this huge brain drain where all we had were 3 and 5 levels that were qualified to do anything, and we didn't have very many 7 or 9 levels that were around to teach anybody anything, and it was a huge impact on our operation for a while. And so, like, dude, I get it. I think fitness standards are important, and they need to be. But I think, but I also would argue that they can be tailored in some respects too, right? Because let's be honest, the fat senior master sergeant who's driving the truck isn't doing the same work as a SEAL, or a Green Beret, or an infantryman, or things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that you need to always try to find some balance between, are we going to lose a ton of experience in some of these policies? And, and there's, some things that require a higher level of fitness than others. I don't know. Maybe there's a balance that can be struck there, but I don't disagree necessarily with the messaging, right? That we need to have a fit force. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, in my time in the military, I felt like our force was pretty fit, and we've always had ways of putting people on profile and giving them an opportunity to pass their PT test. And then if they can't, most of the time you got 1 or 2 chances, and then you were on your way out if you couldn't do it. Right. And so, so again, some of that comes across as a little bit performative to me. But I understand the intention behind it, and I don't think that there's something wrong with that. You'll never hear me disagree with you that there has to be a standard. For every career field, you got to have standards, whether that's educational standards, whether that's, strength and fitness, and, depending on what you're doing, those standards are always going to be important. Going to a straight male standard, I don't know if that's necessary.
Yeah, and the clips that I watched, I was talking specifically about that. And again, I haven't watched the whole thing. This was a fairly large, it was like a 7-minute clip where he was going off on this. And he used the phrase combat jobs. So I don't know that he was talking about like your finance troops. Having,
I think
I think that maybe there was a little bit of room for tailoring in there, or at least saying, hey, for everyone needs to meet this standard. But then for the guys who are humping backpacks and rucking up hills and shit like that, it has to be the male standard. And I made this exact same argument when I was talking about in the TACPs when they were wanting the females to come in, 2010-ish, somewhere around in that area. And in those meetings, that became the discussion. And I said exactly the same thing. I was like, I don't care as long as they can meet the standard. If they can lift the weight and they can do the pull-ups and all that shit, fine. I don't care.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful with that language, though, because I think then what you should do is just go, there needs to be a standard, right? And a standard for specific career fields. And whether you're a guy or a gal, if you meet that standard, then great. And if you don't meet that standard, whether you're a guy or, because guess what? There's a lot of guys that can't meet the standard either.
And he brought that up. Yeah. Says,
so
if you're a scrawny little dude who can't meet the standard,
it has to be the male standard. Because when you say something like that, dude, it comes across as like you're looking for ways to make sure that women can't go to combat, which I think Hegseth has said he doesn't believe that women should be in combat roles. I think Trump has said that as well. Which I completely disagree with. And so I think a better way to have said that, if that's the intention behind it, and this is, anytime somebody like him stands up and talks, there's a whole bunch of political rhetoric that goes into, and not political rhetoric from him necessarily, but, like all of the political nubs are going to get together and go, well, he means this by this. And, everybody's going to sit there and try to dissect everything. So I think the language could, if that's the intention behind it, I think a standard, you need to set standards. So like I've always been a huge proponent of standards in every squadron I was ever in. There is a standard for pass fail. There's a standard for going to the next level and upgrading. There's a standard. You got to meet the standard, dude. Sorry. But saying a specific male standard, I think can, on the political realm of things, can come across as them directing that directly against women. It's the same thing with the shading stuff, and the waivers. And My guess is that, like everything else in the military, they grant a waiver and then it starts to get taken a little too far. But there are guys that need that.
Yes, that last point. If you have pseudofolliculitis, you probably need a shaving waiver.
Yeah.
That does not give you that does not grant you the ability to come out looking like David Koresh.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
you can have about a 2-day stubble. You can have about a 2-day stubble. And those of you who don't know what pseudo is, then go look it up. It's where your hairs basically curl and they ingrow back into the follicle, and it creates an irritation. And if you shave that off, then you cut yourself, and it gets very bad. Right.
And it predominantly happens with African Americans.
Yeah, it does. That and there's a couple of other, like, I don't know, what do you call them? So ethnicities, I guess.
Probably
backgrounds, whatever. Gingers.
Just because their hair is a little
curlier. It's because they have coarse hair that curl.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yes, and I agree because I saw this firsthand, and I dealt with this firsthand. I got my ass chewed firsthand for you go get a shaving waiver, and then it gets out of control. Because at what point do you cut it off? That's it, right? You have to have left and right boundaries to this. And I took away from the message that was a big stomping point in the message was, look, let's get back to baseline and go from there, because the left and right boundaries have gotten so far out, because you delegate it down to your leaders at lower echelons. They delegate it down to leaders at even lower echelons. And eventually it gets down to where so many people now have an interpretation of the rules that your baseline gets very distorted.
Yeah, right? I would imagine it's codified somewhere.
It's got to be in an AFI, right?
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, for the Air Force it does. I haven't read the reg to see what it is. But I know when we were in, they were always very specific about if you had a mustache, here's the parameters, and you can't go past
look like
this
Hitler,
point.
man.
It has to look like this, and same with sideburns, and the length of your hair, and all of that stuff, and so. But I don't know what the AFI is now. So the Air Force instruction is around it now. So I have no idea. I will tell you, driving on to base, there's guys that look pretty shaggy. And so I can understand, an intent to have that, and the whole reason behind all of that was because, back in the day when you go to combat, dude, you don't, hair grabs things and then things burrow in it, and, it causes issues. And,
gas masks and
gas
other PPE that you have to wear.
Yep. Everything's tight and doesn't leak, or there's no way for, hair to, we can't have beards in civilian aviation at the level that I'm at, because we have oxygen masks that if we have a rapid depressurization at altitude, we've got to be able to get a good seal on the mask so we don't pass out and everybody dies.
Yeah.
And so, right, there's reasons, and there's good valid reasons for those types of things. I don't know that you needed to bring I don't know how many were there, but I don't know that you needed to bring all of the senior leaders from all of the different branches and senior enlisted leaders from all the different branches together to talk about that.
Okay. Well,
the national security risk of it alone aside, I don't it seems to me like this could have been a Zoom call, or it could have been hey, I'm the secretary and we need to fix this. So let's adjust the standards and let's come up with, here's what the standard's going to be, and let's push it out and let's get it done. I mean, it seemed very performative in that sense to me.
Okay. In that case, or in that example, it was absolutely performative. It was a song and dance. It was a show. And if you know anything about this administration, the whole thing is a show. Everything is a performance. Everything has to come with a certain amount of spotlight. And on the flip side of what you said about getting everybody together, dude, how many fucking meetings did we go to in the base theater to hear the general get up and talk? And that could have absolutely been a fucking email.
Yeah,
It could have been a goddamn email, but nope, we're going to get the whole wing together and go fucking talk about it. So I don't see the difference there. I don't see a problem with getting all of your people together and giving one message. There is zero confusion here. I'm talking directly to you. I don't see the problem in that.
Yeah.
Okay, from a national security standpoint, all right, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I will.
Well, and dude, just the time associated with it too, right? When you're bringing these people from all across the world, and these people are busy. I mean, these aren't flight commanders that are missing an hour and a half out of their day on Friday to go listen to the wing commander. You know, these are guys that are traveling from all across the world to come back to Virginia and then have to go all the way back. That's a time suck. I don't know if that's
and you know what every one of them motherfuckers has in their pocket
of those
that
people's
right there.
time.
Every one of them has a BlackBerry. Every one of them is well connected. Every one of them has an aide or a deputy or a vice that can handle shit for a couple of days while I'm gone. And I'm just kind of throwing shit back at you for a second.
No,
but
you can be devil's advocate. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of liked it. I liked. Let's get everybody now.
I doubt any of the people in the audience did.
I think it was like you said performative, and I don't know if that's the adjective that I would use, but it was. I believe that they wanted the optics to be what it was. They wanted it to seem like this is a big deal, like this is, we're making these big drastic changes, and I believe from an optics standpoint, that's why they did it the way that they did. You're probably not wrong. It probably could have been a Zoom call with a bunch of 4-stars.
Yeah,
but I don't think that was the point.
Right. Which kind of goes back to my point, right? Is if this was just something to be optics for political purposes or to send a message to not really the people in the audience, but everybody else about how badass you guys are and how transformative you're being and all of that stuff, then I don't know that it was the best use of all those people's time.
Okay, well, let me see if I can reframe it like this a little bit. This is just 100% opinion. If you did it via Zoom or email to a select group of people, when those people turned around to brief their people, this becomes the purple baby dishwasher game, right? The telephone game. And by the time it gets down to the airmen and the soldiers at the lower echelons, so many people have filtered that message now to where maybe it doesn't come across in exactly the same way.
Yep.
And by doing it the way that he did, it was very public. Everybody covered it. Everybody, I mean, it's all over fucking the medias,
but what's the
social and mainstream.
Like,
and so when an airman watches that, there is zero confusion. He doesn't have to agree with it.
But what's the impact? Like,
well, then now it comes down to the lower echelons to enforce it.
Did enforce what? Did they change the regs? Or now they are all just going to go back and start to change the regs, right? Like, I mean, and that's the point, Roscoe, is you can play the telephone game and it's probably going to come out sideways at the bottom of the rung, which is why we have that's why we have instructions. That's why we have regulations, right? Is so that Joe Snuffy, A1C, can go read the reg that's very clear about this. This is the left and right boundary. This is what you can do and can't do. So, I mean, again, if the intention behind it was just to go, hey, you guys need to go fix this and figure out, get people together and figure out how we're going to regulate this and then get it, standardized across all the services, because I don't want the Air Force looking different than the Navy, looking different than the, Army and the Marine Corps. Okay. Like, I get that. Do you need to bring however many GOs and senior enlisted together to do that? Right? Because
that's a good debate, isn't it?
Have you seen any changes at Luke Air Force Base driving into the base yet? I haven't.
No.
No. So, I mean, again, and that's the part that leads it to me of it. That's the performative piece of it that I see in it. Which, dude, I get it. It's politics, right? You need, it's not like this is unique to the Trump administration or, I think the secretaries in general operate a little more in the background maybe than Hegseth did in this moment. But that's not to say that shit like this probably hasn't happened before.
What secretaries?
The cabinet members.
Oh, all the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, so yeah, yeah, that's my take. I mean, imagine you're a 3 or 4-star general. You've spent 30, 35 years in the service, right? And so you've been in since late 80s, 80s time frame probably when you started on your journey, whether that was in
1990 would be
ROTC
35
or
years ago.
the academy. What's that?
1990 would be
1990,
35
yeah.
years ago.
You're probably served in the Gulf. You've seen the Iraq and Afghanistan thing, Bosnia, all the other stuff that we've done. You've seen all the different changes that we've gone through culturally, the evolution as things have changed. You and I saw that in our 20 years in. Things change over
still
time.
seeing it, yeah.
And then you get a commander-in-chief that gets up who dodged the draft and basically tells you that, basically gives a stump speech like he's at a rally. And then you get the secretary that stands up and starts to talk about how everything you've been doing for the last however many years is just woke policy and we're not training warfighters the right way and blah, 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 in a lot of political rhetoric. I could imagine how that would make me feel as a professional, and it wouldn't make me feel very good. To have somebody in that position with that level of qualification sit there and tell me at the end of the day that everything that I've been doing for the last however many years is wrong. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to train warfighters, and he's going to come in and fix it all for me.
Okay. That's an interesting take. It's very exclusive. It I don't think that you're allowing for the possibility that it could be good because of your opinions held of the administration. And I think that that's blinding you to this is my take on what you just said. I think that your formed opinion on what you think of the president is not allowing you to see potentially the good in this. And I see a lot of good in what just happened.
Okay. So what's actionable?
So you were talking about well, nothing's happened yet. Okay. It's been a week. Let's give it a minute, right?
Yeah.
But he did.
So there's probably some directives that come out of it.
He put out in the speech, 10 directives. I jotted down a few notes here. Execute the service fitness standards test at male standards at 70%, which is not terribly different than what we're doing right now. You have to pass your PT test. Everybody from the Joint Chiefs all the way down to the lowest ranking soldier has to pass a PT test. And now I don't know if generals are out there running around the track at the Pentagon doing PT tests every year. My gut tells me probably not, but I don't know. I'm willing to bet that they probably don't do that. Either they've gotten some waiver or they said, fuck it, make it go away. Whatever. But when you get to that level, that's probably not highest on their priority list. Remember back in, what was it, like the mid 2000s, early 10s or so? Was it McChrystal? I think that was over in Afghanistan. He was like the CENTCOM commander or something like that. AFSOC something. That dude was a machine, man.
Yeah.
Like
special ops.
When he walked into a room to give a briefing, people paid attention, right?
Yeah.
Other generals, and let me just throw out General Milley because I can't think of another one right now. He did not exactly inspire me to go to the gym every day.
Yeah. Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't hate the idea that my 4-star needs to be able to get out there and run around with the boys. Remember Killer Quast? Sorry, you were a Viper guy. My bad. Killer Quast was the wing commander at Seymour Johnson when I went through the B course. He was then the wing commander at Bagram when we got over there. And the first thing we had to do when we landed at Bagram was go do a PT test.
Oh, really?
But he was out there running with us, man.
Yeah.
And see, I don't hate that.
Yeah.
Like, this is the Braveheart follow me into battle kind of shit, right? Like,
Sure.
lead by example, be that dude. Don't be General Milley and go eat donuts and drink coffee all day and then preach to the lower echelons that they got to go do this stuff. So I don't hate that, right? So that was one directive that came out. Executable combat fitness test, combat field test. And this is where I think he made a fairly clear distinction between combat troops versus non-combat troops. And I'll just to make an example, I would throw us into combat troops. The things that we did, we're kind of on the pointy end. If we eject, we're behind enemy lines. We got to be able to get our asses out of there. So it behooves us to stay in shape, all that kind of stuff. The finance troop that's working, at the rear echelon, probably not as much.
Yeah.
Right. So the combat field test, executable for units at any time for any reason in all gear. You have to take your PT test twice a year, and you have to meet height and weight measurements twice a year. So, and I remember doing this, right? Because, dude, let's face it, the Air Force PT test was kind of bullshit. It was, I could walk the PT test and meet the minimums for push-ups and sit-ups and still pass it. It wasn't difficult, right? We're not talking about the Marine Corps and Army combat PT test here.
Yeah.
And I was guilty of this. You pass your PT test, and then you're like, fuck it, I'm good for a year, dude. And you don't have to do anything. Give me like 45 days before the PT test. I'll start jogging a little bit, and I can pass the damn thing, right? Yeah. So having to do it twice a year, hey, probably not that bad of a deal, man. It puts a little bit more pressure on you to maintain a certain level of fitness rather than do this kind of up and down knee-jerk swing. All right?
Yep.
Fitness is the new normal. Don't want to see any fat troops and fat generals at the Pentagon. I don't hate that either. Must meet height and weight standards. PT every day. No hot yoga and stretching. So he wants to see his guys out there doing PT. I don't hate that.
Stretching's really good for you.
What's that?
Especially for functional fitness. Stretching's really good for functional fitness.
Yeah, but as part of your military PT, I see his point. The fitness readiness team over here at Luke, dude, if you and I would have had that when we were coming up, we wouldn't be as broken as we are now.
No,
those dudes are doing great. They're taking in, everybody from the brand new B courser all the way through the SOC course. They're taking these guys over there 3-4 times a week, and they're putting them through programs to enhance their physical abilities to withstand the pressures and the shit that we went through. Yeah. And it's amazing. The level of the flexibility, the strength, the neck and lower body work that they're doing with these guys. God, I wish we would have had that.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
And guess what? It's fucking mandatory.
Yeah.
It's not an option. This is where I think this conversation can devolve into something we probably don't want to get it into, but it starts talking about gender neutral standards. And that's where he starts kind of segregating out the males and females and things like that. But I'm going to go back and listen to the whole thing so that I get the entire context. I still think that he's talking about combat versus non-combat.
Okay. What do you think about, let me ask you this question. Yeah. What do you think the thought process was of the people in the audience when President Trump got up and told them to get ready that they're looking at creating a QRF to go into American cities, and that he thinks that that's a valid training ground for them to use?
Yeah, gosh, man, there's a lot to unpack there. Sending troops into American cities, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I haven't really thought about it too in depth. Certainly the optics are bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you talk Title 10 and all the stuff, I don't even know if it's legal.
Maybe not. I mean, he's definitely stretching the bounds of legality by using the Guard, which are state-run, not federally owned. But
there's a difference between the Guard and active duty.
And so, he's not sending active duty troops. Active duty federal military troops in there. So, yeah, I think there's layers to debate for sure in there, and I'm not that well versed in it. But to use it as a training ground, that to me is performative, to use your word. If there's anything we know about this president, he is a showman, and he's going to say things and he's going to tweet things. Does that make that policy? Probably not. Orange man bad. Orange man tweeted at me hard, and I got angry. Those are always funny to me. But when people start taking that shit seriously, like some of your underlings, that's where I think that the messaging can get weird.
Yeah, well, but going back to your previous comments, right? This was the opportunity to bring all these people together to have that direct messaging to your group. You've got the commander in chief up there saying, "Hey, we are working on developing a QRF to have active duty members use LA, Chicago as training grounds." How do you think that was received by those people?
I'm sure they all kind of rolled their eyes. I know. I mean, you and I are doing the same thing right now. We're just kind of rolling our eyes, going, "Yeah, okay, he's talking shit again." But
is he though?
Well,
or do you think there's intentionality behind it?
Is this any different than Pete Hegseth getting up there and talking about directives? I mean, you yourself just said that like nothing has happened. Where's the action in all this? The president says shit all the time and nothing happens out of it. He just talks. Like he told people to go drink Clorox during COVID, and very few people went and drank Clorox. Like, you know what I mean? So people are going to talk shit. Sure. And to your point with Pete Hegseth, maybe this was all just shit talking, and there's not going to be any no,
I'm sure that
there's not going to be any rewrite of any regulations. There's not going to be any enforcement.
Well,
maybe it just was, some puppet up there giving his fucking speech. He was the mouthpiece for Donald Trump. Maybe that's what it was. I don't think it was.
No, I mean, I'm sure that there's stuff that'll come out of this. Again, though, the original question that you asked me was, what was was there validity to doing this and bringing all these people together? And if that's the case, like if it's just, hey, here's 10 directives, these are things that we're going to move out on. I need feedback so that you guys can tell me how we're going to execute this and make these standards exist across the board, for the stuff that came up that they can legally do. Then I would say, yeah, I don't think that it was necessary to do it in this type of forum again, and that's why it comes across as performative to me. That said, dude, I have a degree in political science. I also understand the nature and desire for people in those positions to do performative things.
Yeah. Showmanship, right?
Yeah, a little bit. There's a little bit of showmanship involved for sure.
You know what the conversation is right now? Probably when all those generals went back to their corners, they're all sitting there talking shit and they're bitching and complaining. But in the end, they're probably all going, man, am I going to have a job next week? Maybe I need to go on the treadmill, or maybe I just quit. And there's a list. You can Google it. There's a list of generals who've handed in their resignation over this.
Yeah,
fine, dude. If this is the hill you're going to die on, dude, that is your decision. But there's probably some other people out there who are maybe on the fence. Maybe you got a little soft over the last couple of years because being a general is fucking time consuming and hard. And maybe you find it difficult to find time to go to the gym. And maybe this helps you reorient your priorities.
Yeah. And let's be honest, dude, when you get older, it's hard to keep weight off.
It certainly is.
And, depending on how those guys came up. I mean, I remember very specifically the 06 that I worked for at Paycom, who had been an artillery officer. His back was so fucked up from all the stuff that he had done as a younger man around throwing artillery shells around and shit like that, God bless. And he was a big guy to begin with. I mean, he was just a big man. And I wouldn't say he was fat, but he wasn't fit. But the dude couldn't run. His back was so fucked up, and I'm sure he had a waiver for it, and all that stuff. So, I mean, I get it, right? It's an image thing, but do you want to lose people who have this vast amount of experience, who may be a little on the heavier side?
Yeah.
But have a valid reason for it, No,
I think you can certainly make that argument. Yeah.
So I think again,
which is more important here? Like, let's focus on what's really
right, because he's not picking up a gun and charging the hill anymore. You know what I mean? but the experience that he has,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've made the same. I've made the same in other conversations with other people. I think that, again, and this is why I think you have to be a little more balanced and maybe a little more precise in what you're looking for. Because I guarantee you, there's probably some guys in wheelchairs who are really fucking smart
Mhm.
that would be awesome in the space world.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong.
And they'll never get an opportunity if they wanted to serve because they're in a wheelchair.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong. My oldest son was disqualified for military service for type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, right?
It is.
And that goes back to the standards. I got into this discussion with Andy Stump when I was on his podcast, the Cleared Hot podcast. He's a former Navy SEAL, and we started talking about this. This was a couple of years ago, and he asked me about physical fitness standards and da-da-da. And I was kind of on the like, well, I mean, if they can do the job, then who cares? Because the finance guy doesn't have the same physical rigors that, an infantryman does. And his rebuttal to that was actually very interesting. Do you remember back in, it was the late 90s, early 2000s, we were sort of in this dip, and we didn't have enough security forces personnel. They were still SPs back in the day, security police. And we came up with this augmentee program.
I remember that.
I and a lot of my buddies had to go and do this augmentee program where for like a month out of your year, you had to go around and drive around in a truck with a fucking M16 and pretend like you were security forces, right? Yeah. Suddenly, your physical ability became very important. Right.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm secure in Tyndall Air Force Base. There's not a lot of terrorists trying to get into Tyndall Air Force Base in 1998. So, but when we go downrange, we've seen this before where, you're a finance troop, but for 4 hours today, I need you to pull a detail out in the fucking shack out there, overwatching the ECP. Right.
Yeah.
So, I kind of don't hate that argument.
Considerations for all of it.
Yeah, I think that that's not bad to have a certain level of, you can't just let one career field go and not consider that as part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there at all.
Yeah, and you and I have kind of gone back and forth in this discussion, poking holes in each other's arguments, which is great. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily, I'm not 100% on board with all this stuff. I don't think that, I think this pendulum swings. It always does, right?
It does.
And
that was when I was making it at the very beginning. I can remember when we were doing this back in the mid-aughts.
Yeah,
with,
I'm talking
enlisted people.
I'm talking more like administratively, from administration to administration, we go, and we saw this as recently as Joe Biden, where the optics, right, whether it was intentional or not, the optics were he placed people in positions not based on qualifications, based on some other immutable attribute or characteristic or whatever it was. Now that pendulum is swung back to back the other way. Right, with a different administration playing for a different side, and we're sort of seeing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And here in a couple of years, when we have another election, who's to say it doesn't swing back the other way?
Yep, it's going to go the same way. Yeah.
So for the service members who are out there right now, if I had any advice, I would say just roll with the punches for right now, because chances are it's going to swing back the other way. And it's going to equalize over time, right?
Yeah.
You might have a couple of really difficult years here. You might have, and for the people who are like extremely, like David and Caleb, right? These guys who are in the military, going into the military, who are physically fit, they're just like, whatever, dude. I PT every day anyway.
It doesn't have a big impact on them.
Let's not discount that, for a lot of people that are out there, this is not a big deal to them. They're just like, whatever.
And to be honest,
there are a few people that are going to be super butthurt about it.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, too, I mean, the administration and the current secretary have the right to adjust the standards, as they see fit. The only thing that I would say is I wouldn't want to see them do that in any way that is, that detracts people from being able to do what they can do, right? So, like, I'm fine if you want to set a specific standard, for fitness or whatever. But that should be a standard for everybody, right? It shouldn't be a focus on just men versus women, or if there's like, I don't want to see any kind of gender targeting or race targeting coming out of which unfortunately those could be second or third order effects depending on how things get implemented. And I think that's and to be honest with you, that's what the GOs are going to have to struggle with. That's what they're going to have to figure out. They're going to have to figure out how to take they're going to have to figure out how to take the intentionality behind what the secretary is driving and then turn it into something practical and that'll work in practice.
Yeah. We saw something very similar to this in the early spring, in like that first 100 days period, when the administration came out and they did this big push to where, hey, we're going to get rid of all the DEI shit, right? And so what did they do? They went and scrubbed the records of people like Fifi Malakowski.
Yeah, right.
And
or
like,
the Tuskegee Airmen.
I think you missed the point here a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the point of getting rid of all the references to you have to fit into some sort of box to get into here, and if you're not in that box anymore, I understand that piece of it.
Yeah.
But to go and scrub records for people who have done this, like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, it swung that way, and then
and we see it on both sides, dude.
But this is what I was saying. We honestly do. But this is what I was saying earlier was, had this messaging been done over a Zoom call or an email, I think you invite a little bit of opportunity for interpretation here, and that's exactly what happened. From what I can tell, that's exactly what happened during that whole DEI thing back in March and April. Was there was a statement put out, and then the lower echelons, the leaders at lower levels, they sort of took that to the extreme.
Yeah. Which can happen.
And to be fair, like the president and the cabinet members, the leaders in the executive branch, they could have reined their people in and be like, whoa. That was not the point. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
That's a foul. They should have reined their guys back in and go, well, let me be a little more crystal clear with my messaging here.
Yeah, and I know this part of what is it can be frustrating for people, including people in the administration, is the fact that it takes time to do this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And and the government moves slow intentionally in some ways. Because, dude, like when I was at Paycom and I had to rewrite the. It's a long story, but I got tagged in my last year at Paycom. I was working directly for the Geographic Combatant Commander. And Admiral Locklear was shifting the way that Paycom was designed. So Paycom had always been designed as kind of an administrative is not the right word. It wasn't an operational, it was a strategic command. It wasn't an operational command, right? So much like other COCOMs, combatant commands, they had war plans on the shelf that assigned JTFs, Joint Task Force. And if something kicked off, then the JTF got stood up and Paycom did stuff to support the JTF. And Admiral Locklear came in and goes, if we go to war with China tomorrow, President Obama isn't going to call the 2-star JTF commander to ask him how it's going. He's going to call me because I'm the COCOM.
Mm-hmm.
And so he made this whole pivot from us being a strategic command to an operational command. I got tasked with rewriting the command and control structure for all 15 groups that basically fell under the Paycom umbrella for Phase 0 and Phase 1 operations. So people that don't know, in joint operations, there's 5 phases to war. Phase 0 is peace. Phase 1 is never mind. The reason why is because in Phase 1, because we're doing Phase 1 shit. We're doing shaping operations in the Pacific, right? Especially when you talk about SOCOM. And so I had to rewrite this entire, and dude, I don't know anything about fucking joint shit at all, right? So I had to do a bunch of research and read a bunch, and I did JPGs until I almost died, joint planning groups, right? And we started at the lower echelons. It was me and a bunch of other lieutenant colonels from all the different commands, and emails back and forth and getting together, and what does this need to look like for your boss, and all this, all the way up to eventually me briefing Admiral Locklear, all the 4 stars and 2 stars and 3 stars that were in charge of Alaska Command, SOCOM, PACOM, or PACAF, USER-PAC, MARFER-PAC, all of the PACs, and then a bunch of our subsidiary groups, to the point where at the end of that brief, Admiral Locklear looks at all these guys and goes, okay, you have 2 weeks to review this document and get changes. And he goes, and I don't want your deputy doing this. I don't want anybody doing this for you. Your guys' eyes on this.
Yeah.
And then get the changes back to CAS. And that's how it typically works. And I think, a lot of the stuff that's going to happen now, that's how it's going to work too, right? These guys are going to go back and they're going to get an action officer and they're going to assign it to them and they're going to start a bunch of JPGs and they're going to get a bunch of inputs and they're going to start to figure out how this should look and how this works. And they're going to go back to the commander and goes, is this meeting your intent? And he's going to go, no, you're off the reservation. Go back and do this. And then they're going to go back and do it. And then it slowly bubbles its way up, where it's a bunch of different eyes at multiple levels see it. And then it comes back to the commander and then he makes the ultimate decision. But that takes time.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's why I think a lot of what was said, while some of the intentionality behind it is probably really could be good and could be positive for the force overall, it probably could have been handled in a similar fashion. You know what I mean? Versus bringing everybody together.
Yeah, I think your analogy there was really good. And I as he started his discussion with the audience, he said, while we're sitting here having this, there's an email going out to your inboxes right now that has all these directives listed. And he had 10 of them. I didn't write them all down, but he had 10 of them. So presumably that process was beginning as soon as those guys could open up their Crackberries and check their emails.
Yeah.
And they go, they read through it and they try to cipher the wheat from the chaff. And then they're going to send that down to a lower echelon, probably some lieutenant colonel.
Point, maybe that was that was in some of the direction and intention behind it too, was just to make sure that the message was clear directly from him. And then they go back and then they go, okay, well, now I have I understand a little more what the nuance of each of these things is, and I can figure out a way to move out on them. So,
well, no, and that's sort of what we were talking about earlier.
I did feel bad at him at the end, though, for him at the end, because it did seem like he wanted them to applaud.
I think it
did seem like he waited there awkwardly for a few seconds, expecting a reaction.
It was probably twofold. It was, one, to be very clear, like, I don't want there's not going to be any misinterpretation here. This is what I said. It's on every fucking news channel out here, to include YouTube. Like, this is what I said, right? These are the directives in writing that are in your email, right? On the other hand, what you said, though, it was a performance. It was optics. It was to get people riled up and talking about it. It was maybe to sway a couple of people in one direction or another. You can't ever overlook.
Cause now to get rid of more generals if he wants to.
You can't ever overlook the motive behind some of these things. Yeah. And I think it would be a really good. We could have a very similar discussion, I believe, and I believe it would almost be identical if we started talking about the budget and the shutdown. Because I think a lot of that is performative. I think a lot of that is BS and stupid shit, right? You had one job, it was coming for a fucking year, right? It's not like it was a big surprise. It's not like you got an email at 10 o'clock at night that said, oh, by the way, we have to do a budget in 2 hours. No. I've been working on this for 12 fucking months, man. So you want to talk about grandstanding and putting on a show? That'd be a really good one. Maybe next week we'll go down that rabbit hole. That'd be fun. But yeah, I don't disagree that it was probably, a lot of it was optics. And dude, to go back to the very beginning of the discussion, I don't hate this. I don't hate the change to the Department of War, because to me, words mean things, and I think it's a little more proactive. I think just on a surface level, I think proactive action is better than reactive, in my opinion. Now we can, I think we'll both agree that, is it really going to change the way we do business?
No,
probably not. right? No, I mean,
and I would argue that defense is more encompassing than war is because we do a lot more than war.
could be, yeah.
I mean, one of the most valuable things that we did in the Pacific and have done in the Pacific in the last 30 years to build relationships is when there's an earthquake or a tsunami or a nuclear reactor or something like that, we put a JTF together and send shit over and help those host countries out with whatever the calamity is. That's how we build relationships, and that has nothing to do with war. That's humanitarian assistance. We do a ton of humanitarian assistance in the military.
How do you draw the
because-
parallel? How do you draw the line between humanitarian assistance and defense versus humanitarian assistance and war? Is there a big difference between those two?
Well, I think defense is more encompassing. I mean, war is very specific, right? Where defense can mean, yeah, dude, we're doing humanitarian assistance, we're doing, joint operations, we're doing wartime action. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm just saying, I think you could make an argument that defense encompasses a lot more of what we do than just war. I understand your point, right? It's very decisive, it's very directive, it sounds cool, it seems like we're leaning forward, it seems proactive. But
well, I mean, and I'm legit trying to understand your statement here, your argument. Humanitarian assistance to me is like a subtenet of the DoD, something that we do. Well, not even the DoD, the U.S. government, in general,
USG.
right? The DoD happens to be one of those departments that's kind of on the pointy end because we have the fucking airplanes and we have the people.
Yeah, we've got the lift. We've
Yeah,
got the
we can get the things there on the boats and on the planes and stuff. So it is a little bit highlighted there when you see, some young airman on the back of a C-17 handing out cases of water. You don't necessarily see the guys in khakis from Department of Education doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, optically, it seems that is probably a major thing. So word I'm looking for, major thing that the DoD does. And whether it is, I said DoD, it's DOW now. Whether it's DoD or DOW, that doesn't change.
No,
that to me. So So
again, that's why I say it's just semantics. Honestly,
I don't think
it changes.
It probably is, but just from a language standpoint, proactive versus reactive. That's where I came up with that. Anyways, cool, dude. You got anything else?
I don't.
Awesome. That was fun.
Yeah,
that was good. Budget.
Well, I think this is another good example too of which I think is really important in what's going on in society today with how divisive the political rhetoric is. Like, this is just another demonstration of how you and I are good friends. We can have differing points of view.
Sure.
And we can have a logical, reasonable conversation with one another where we take each other's points. We agree with some of them. We disagree with others. And guess what, dude? We're still friends.
Yeah, let's go get a cheeseburger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go have a beer and watch some football.
No big deal. I would hope that everyone who listens to our podcast has noticed that over the last couple of years. And I had this interesting conversation with Nicky yesterday. He came out to watch football with us, and he's 23 now, and he's maturing a little bit, and he's starting to branch out and expand his circle. And he tends to be very introverted. So this is challenging for him. And we had a good talk about, hey man, it's okay to have 3 or 4 or 5 different circles of people.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to find a couple of people where you can have discussions like this, and you don't always have to agree.
And I enjoy having these conversations with you too sometimes, because sometimes it does challenge some of my own biases, and I have to sit there and go, yeah, am I being a douche about this just because I don't like the big orange Cheeto, you know? Because if people haven't figured it out yet, I think I'm very, very fairly center, but I'm center left. If I had to pick a side of the line to fall on from the center, it'd probably be slightly left. And I think it goes back to just our overall point too of, dude, just stay curious and don't be judged. Don't like, dude, it drives me crazy sometimes because I'll tell you what, man. So 20 years in the military. I was a fighter pilot. And I get into the cockpit with some of these guys, and I have a handgun or whatever. And, the automatic assumption is that I'm a hardcore Republican
You're a
conservative
warmonger.
because I served
Yeah.
in the military and I carry a gun. You
Yeah.
know, and it's just like, oh, dude, if you only
But
knew.
that's the
So-
disadvantage of this two-party system that we've had that is devolved into what it is today, where you have to pick a side, and
Yeah.
when you do, you have to agree with all the things, right?
Yeah,
And
which is stupid. They're
I
supposed to be
think-
big tents.
Man, I think very few people fit those categories. I really do.
Yeah.
I think most people are sort of just in the middle of the bell
I do
curve,
too.
like a little bit of stuff from over there, like a little bit of
Yep.
stuff from over there, you know?
Maybe have one or two issues that they're really excited about.
Yeah, it's like
Everything else is kind
you know,
of whatever.
when you go out to eat and you choose a restaurant, you don't have to like everything on the menu,
Yeah.
you know? Like, and I think that's a fair point, man. I think most people would fall into that category of, yeah, man. I mean, if you want to be gay and go marry a bunch of dudes, like, who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? Socially liberal and fiscally conservative, however you want to frame it, man.
Yeah.
You know, I like the idea that we're trying to project some power out into the in our foreign policy and hold some other people accountable across the world that maybe haven't been pulling their weight in some ways. I don't hate that. The way we're doing it, okay, we can debate that. And I think that's true for every issue that we would to bring up on here. Is we probably agree on the problem, we might differ on the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the execution of the execution of the solution.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's where I have the biggest heartburn with this administration right now. Is I don't necessarily disagree with some of the policies, but I strongly disagree with the execution of some of them.
Yeah. Well, that's a fun discussion though.
So
Makes it interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Be the change.
Be the one.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.b1change1.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at B1Change1 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.